We're here today to talk about reconciliation, and it's something that's close to your heart, that you've been campaigning on it. The world is quite divided now, isn't it? So
there are, in this strange old job of mine, I had a meeting last summer with the Secretary General of the United Nations, and we were talking about this. He said they counted between, depending on how you define it, 52 to 56 wars, civil wars or international wars going on in the world at the moment. You've got places like the Congo, which are forgotten wars. Since it broke out in the mid-90s, 6 million people have died. 6 million. Wow. I mean, that's incredible. That's 15 times what we lost in this country in the Second World War.
Yeah.
You know, it's just appalling. And yeah, it's very divided. And all arguments come down to binaries. It's either this or it's that. Whereas almost all conflicts, whether it's at home or between two great nations, it's much more complicated than that.
In terms of a lot of young people are going to be here at your event today, do you think children these days can be their true selves with the pressure from society, social media, the fear of being cancelled? There's a lot of pressure on youngsters, isn't it?
I am going to talk about that today, exactly that. I think there's a huge pressure from being cancelled, from cancel culture, from social media, and not just on young people. But I think what we're launching today is called the Difference Course. It's something that's being used in prisons and being used all around the world now, which was written here, not by me, by some much cleverer colleagues of mine. And the aim of that is to train people to be able to disagree well. So not say everyone's got to be the same, which is, I think, what social media says, you know, get in your box. And this is your box, and everyone in there will agree with you. And the people in that box are your enemies. It's to say, actually, the people in that box are also human beings who get hurt, who get happy, who get sad, who have problems. So let's find a way of you being able to be together and build something much stronger as a result.
Do you think we're being too sensitive now in society? We're too afraid to speak the truth for fear of saying the wrong thing, for fear of being
cancelled? I think there's an element of that. I mean, I'm sure, I know you're asking the questions, but if I was to say to you, do you ever think about self-censoring? I don't know if you do it or not.
Well, I have to in this job, but
yeah, you have to think, maybe not a good thing to go there.
Yeah.
And I do that a lot. And if we're doing that, imagine what it's like for a teenager in the midst of all the insecurities, trying to fit in. I remember trying to fit in at school, and you would too, that, the last thing you want to do is be conspicuous. And suddenly you can be conspicuous accidentally on a world scale. I think it's not we're too sensitive, I think we're too cruel. We've lost forgiveness. We've forgotten how to forgive, to go with the flow, to say, well, okay, so he said something a bit silly on Good Morning Britain, but, let's just get over it, move on.
But if it's a topic sort of race or religion, for example, or something else that is controversial, people try and steer away from those subjects these days for fear of being labelled incorrectly.
Well, there's always been an element of that, hasn't it? I mean, if you go back to the 19th century, in the British Army, 3 topics were forbidden at the officers' mess table: religion, politics, and women. Not because they were prudes of any kind, it was because those led to duels and rows and divided groups. So there's nothing strange about that, but certainly speaking as a Christian, Jesus Christ does not say be all like one another. He talks about the way that we're all known by God, loved by God, and he says serve one another and love one another, even if you're very different. He says love your enemies.
So we should be more tolerant, is what you're saying?
I would put it stronger than that. I think we need to be those who recognise difference, Forgive when people in all good conscience have made a mistake. It's more difficult when they're being deliberately awful. And learn to accept that we're all different and we can learn from one another.
That's powerful coming from the position that you're in as the Archbishop, but when people are on their phones, on social media, a teenager or whoever you are, it's very difficult there to probably self-censor, or you could offend people.
And we all do stupid things, but is it malicious or is it a mistake? If it's malicious, have I done it in a fit of temper? I'm sure you never get impatient at home. I'm sure you never get impatient with your family.
My wife would say exactly that, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And you're going to pay for that when this goes out.
Yeah.
But when you do, in any healthy situation, you say, I shouldn't have said that, I'm really sorry. I was cross. In any good family, you work out how to forgive, how to love one another, and how to move on. That's really important. We've forgotten how to do that in society. There's this huge independence and autonomy, self-centeredness. We have to learn to forgive. We have to learn to listen and to reimagine the way in which we can relate to each other.
And that message from you is important in the sense that social media, for example, media is a big influence on people's lives. But do you think that the church needs to have a voice and opinion, so you can become, still stay relevant to people's lives?
I mean, the church in the last couple of years has grown, especially among young people.
Yeah.
We're seeing quite a sharp increase in young people coming to the church. I think we have to learn to not to censor, but to be transparent, to be honest, and to accept each other's honesty, and, as Jesus says, to love one another. If you're with someone who you are confident cares for you, you can put up with a lot more honesty from them than if it's with someone you're not sure about the relationship.
But outside the family aspect of relationship, in terms of politics, society, business, you think that those same principles should apply elsewhere?
Yes, I really do. I've seen some extraordinary things. I remember, it's very relevant to the moment, but it was many years ago during the First Intifada in the Middle East. A rabbi from a settlement and an imam who had been part of one of the then terrorist groups. We were working with them when I was working at Coventry Cathedral. We were working with them. They got a prize because when they were given the prize, they appeared in the ruins of Coventry Cathedral, which is a great world centre of reconciliation, and the sheikh said, "We were enemies. We still disagree passionately over matters of life and death. But we will," I'm quoting him exactly, "we will walk the stony path of forgiveness and sow roses behind us." It's a very beautiful image. Yeah. Now, that is the proper thing. That's how you do it.
Yeah. And talking about the Middle East, you've touched upon it there. I know you've been critical of there needs to be a ceasefire, hostages need to be released. Do you think our government, the US, governments around the world should be doing more? We have a horrific conflict.
We have an absolutely, it's an area I know well, it's people I know well, it's beyond description in terms of its horror. As is Ukraine, where I was in February. Those are two places that weigh on my mind constantly. In the Middle East, we know that a ceasefire is essential. The Pope publicly last week in a meeting with Anglican archbishops last Thursday morning said peace is always better than war. That is true in the Middle East. These wars have been going on since 1948, arguably for much longer than that. So there must be a ceasefire, but it must include not only the release of hostages, but accounting for the hostages that have died. It must then include talks that can, over time, begin what will be the generational task of building trust. These things are essential, but killing each other just doesn't work.
And can I touch upon, because we're short of time, but in terms of the royal family, I know you obviously originated there's the coronation, and the king said he has cancer, so does his daughter-in-law. Do they turn into you for advice now? I know you didn't want to talk about the gossip or all those conspiracy theories.
I won't comment at all about conversations with the royal family. I just say to everyone, if you're someone who prays, pray for them, because that's can't go wrong. I mean, and if you're someone who doesn't pray, pray for them, because it can't do any harm and it might do some good. Because actually God is up there, even if you don't believe in him.
All right, excellent. We should do that. And in terms of, there's a royal rift, do you think in the family, should there be reconciliation there?
Exactly the same answer, pray for them. We must not judge them. They're human beings. They must not be judged. They need to be prayed for and supported.
And we were talking earlier on about Nuneaton, Coventry. I know well, my hometown. You started your early career out there. People in those sort of towns sort of feel forgotten about, though, really, by politicians, by institutions, that their views don't really count. Do you agree with that?
I think you've really put your finger on it. And there are places like that all over the country. And when we have these arguments about immigration, when we have these arguments about many different aspects of social policy, I found the people in Nuneaton incredible people. One of our children went to a school that was majority Muslim, right in the middle by the mosque. Yeah. You probably remember it.
Yeah.
And it was welcoming, it was warm, it was friendly. They're not hostile people, but they want to know that they matter. And it's no use, their worry about immigration is not usually racist. Their worry about immigration is, can I get
access to services,
doctors, schools, clinics, hospital, George Eliot Hospital.
Yeah.
You know.
And you think they're legitimate concerns from people?
Of course they're legitimate concerns.
But do you feel that those concerns are being marginalised a bit in the political debate?
I think they get caught up in the fuss and flurry and get lost in the fog of the conflict. And we need governments, the church, need not to lecture, but to love and care. And I know that I was up there quite recently. I was visiting churches there, including Chilscoten, right through Nuneaton, Gallycommon, all of them. And every single one of them was doing debt counselling, had food banks, was providing night shelters in winter for homeless people. The church was caring for people, but they need to know that they are a priority in government as well. No more than anyone else, but they're a priority.
You're in a very privileged position. You speak to the royalty, you speak to politicians and business, and you've got great access to information. Are you concerned by what you see in the future?
I am in a very privileged position. I am so conscious of that. I can't believe the privilege I've had to be in this job. And how little I deserved it, I think, probably I'd add. But what I would say is I am concerned. I'm not anxious or worried, but we need vision. There's a wonderful verse in the book of Proverbs in the Bible that says, without a vision, the people perish. We need a vision for a united country of care and compassion, of hospitality and love, which with those virtues will reassume its natural leadership in the world, not by force, but by courage and valour and honour and the quality that this country brings to the world.
And we still have a place in the world, do we, Britain?
We have an absolutely extraordinary place in the world. We have a beautiful place in the world. Let's not throw it away by turning in on ourselves, but let's be those people that people look up to, envy, that we help others, we build up other countries. These are the things we want.
Positive note to end on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John.
Thanks very much.
Lovely.